The relationship between China and Japan is one of the world's most complex, shaped by centuries of history, shifting alliances, and a delicate balance of power. These two nations, both ancient and modern in their own ways, have long stood as giants in East Asia, their destinies intertwined yet often at odds. Neighbors separated by only a narrow stretch of sea, China and Japan are economic powerhouses whose fortunes are deeply connected. Their trade routes crisscross the East China Sea, and their economies are so interlinked that a ripple in one can send waves through the other. Yet proximity has not always bred harmony. Over the centuries, waves of cultural exchange have flowed between them: art, religion, technology, and philosophy. Despite this rich tapestry of shared heritage, deep-seated suspicion and rivalry persist, rooted in both ancient conflicts and more recent traumas. Today, their relationship is defined by a complex mix of military competition, economic interdependence, and unresolved historical grievances. Each new summit or military maneuver is watched with wary eyes as both sides seek to protect their interests. China's rapid military modernization and expanding influence in the region have raised alarms in Tokyo. At the same time, Japan's economic reliance on China brings both immense opportunity and significant risk, making cooperation essential, but never easy. The scars of history, wars, occupations, and territorial disputes continue to poison relations, fueling mistrust and sometimes sparking public protests on both sides. The Indo-Pacific region has become a potential flashpoint with these two giants at its very center. Their naval forces patrol contested waters, and their strategies increasingly shape the security landscape of the entire region. To truly understand their rivalry, we must look beyond the headlines. It's essential to examine their national strategies, evolving military doctrines, and the domestic pressures that drive decision-making in both Beijing and Tokyo. For Japan, the challenge is to balance security and prosperity in the face of China's rise. Tokyo must navigate a path that protects its people and economy, while also maintaining alliances and preparing for an uncertain future. For China, the goal is nothing less than achieving what it calls great rejuvenation, restoring its historical status, and reshaping the regional order to reflect its growing power and ambitions. This story unpacks the many layers of threat, competition, and uneasy coexistence between China and Japan, revealing how their rivalry will shape not just their own futures, but the fate of the entire region. The roots of China-Japan tension run deep into history. For China, memories of invasion and atrocities like the Nanking Massacre are ever present, fueling national grievance. The Chinese government uses this history to rally support and justify suspicion of Japan. In Japan, many feel they've apologized enough, leading to apology fatigue and frustration with China's use of history as a political tool. This cycle of grievance and resentment keeps trust elusive. Symbolic acts like visits to the Yasukuni Shrine or anti-Japanese protests reinforce mutual suspicion. Even minor disputes risk escalation, as historical animosity lingers just below the surface. The past is the ever-present fuel for today's tensions. The military balance in East Asia has shifted dramatically. China's massive investment in modernizing its armed forces has transformed the PLA into a formidable, high-tech force. Its Navy and Air Force now operate near Japan's borders, and its missile arsenal can strike anywhere in Japan. Japan, in response, is rearming, expanding its defense budget, acquiring advanced weapons, and reinterpreting its constitution for collective self-defense. The result is a classic security dilemma. Each side's buildup fuels the other's anxiety. China claims it's defending its sovereignty. Japan sees a direct threat. The US-Japan alliance deepens, prompting further Chinese expansion. This action-reaction cycle drives a regional arms race. The risk of miscalculation grows as military deployments increase. The region stands on edge, with both sides preparing for contingencies. The balance of power is no longer static, it's a moving target. The East China Sea's uninhabited islands, known as Senkaku in Japan and Diaoyu in China, are considered one of the most dangerous flashpoints in the region. These small rocky outcrops have become a focal point of tension between two powerful nations. Japan has administered these islands for over a century, maintaining a strong presence. However, China's claim to the islands intensified significantly after the discovery of potential oil reserves in the surrounding waters. adding an economic dimension to the territorial dispute. The dispute has evolved into a test of sovereignty and national pride for both countries. It has sparked protests and heightened nationalistic sentiments, with each side unwilling to back down. Coast Guard standoffs have become routine, with both sides frequently engaging in tense confrontations. These encounters push the limits of diplomacy, yet both nations have so far managed to avoid crossing into open conflict. For Japan, defending these islands is a critical red line. It is not only about territorial integrity, but also a test of its long-standing alliance with the United States, which is crucial for its security strategy. The United States has pledged to defend Japan if the islands are attacked, significantly raising the stakes. This commitment underscores the strategic importance of the islands in the broader context of regional security. China views its patrols as rightful assertions of sovereignty, aiming to gradually change the status quo. These actions are part of a broader strategy to assert its influence in the region. This salami-slicing strategy seeks to wear down Japan's resistance by making incremental advances, testing the limits of Japan's patience and resolve. The islands are more than just barren rocks. They symbolize the broader struggle between a rising power, China, and an established power, Japan. This struggle reflects the shifting balance of power in the region. The risk of escalation is ever present, with each incident potentially sparking a larger conflict. The situation requires careful management to prevent a crisis that could have far-reaching consequences. Taiwan's fate is a strategic concern for Japan, shaping not only its foreign policy, but also its national security priorities. In recent years, Japanese officials have grown increasingly vocal about the importance of Taiwan's stability, recognizing that any conflict in the Taiwan Strait would have direct and profound consequences for Japan itself. The island sits at the heart of the first island chain, a string of islands stretching from Japan through Taiwan and the Philippines, controlling access to the vast Pacific Ocean. Whoever controls Taiwan holds a key maritime gateway, influencing the movement of military and commercial vessels throughout the region. For China, reunification with Taiwan is not just a political aspiration but a core national goal. It is seen as essential to completing the country's territorial integrity and as a way to break out of what Beijing perceives as a US-led containment strategy, which limits China's access to the Pacific and its ability to project power. For Japan, the prospect of a Chinese-controlled Taiwan is deeply alarming. It would threaten vital sea lanes that supply Japan with energy and resources and put Chinese military forces uncomfortably close to Japanese territory, especially the southwestern islands. Japan's leaders now openly state that a crisis over Taiwan would directly affect Japan's security. This marks a significant shift from previous decades, when Tokyo was more cautious about discussing Taiwan publicly. US military bases in Japan would be crucial in any defense of Taiwan, making Japan not just a bystander, but a likely participant in any potential conflict. The presence of tens of thousands of US troops on Japanese soil underscores the island nation's strategic importance. In response, Japan is reinforcing its southwestern islands, building new bases, and increasing its military presence. Joint exercises with the US have become more frequent and complex, all aimed at preparing for a possible Taiwan contingency. China, however, views these moves as blatant foreign interference in its internal affairs. Beijing has repeatedly warned Japan and the US against crossing its red lines, insisting that Taiwan is a purely domestic issue. The Taiwan issue has become the region's most dangerous flashpoint, with the potential to draw in all three major powers, China, Japan, and the United States, into a direct confrontation. The stakes are existential for both sides. For China, it's about national unity and breaking free from strategic encirclement. For Japan, it's about safeguarding its own sovereignty and the security of its people. Any miscalculation or misstep could trigger a major war, with devastating consequences not just for the region, but for the world. The future of Taiwan is inseparable from Japan's own security. As tensions rise, both nations and their allies must navigate this perilous situation with caution, diplomacy, and resolve. Economic ties between China and Japan run deep, but interdependence is now seen as a vulnerability. China is Japan's largest trading partner, and Japanese investment has fueled growth in both countries. Yet, China has shown it will use economic leverage for political ends, as seen in the rare earths embargo after a Senkaku clash. Japan is now pushing for economic security, diversifying supply chains and reducing reliance on China. The goal isn't full decoupling, but resilience. Japanese companies face a dilemma: stay for profits or leave to reduce risk. The economic relationship is a tightrope walk, balancing opportunity and exposure. What once stabilized ties now adds a new layer of competition. Economic coercion is a real threat, shaping corporate and government strategy. The economic front is as contested as the military one. Despite rivalry, China and Japan keep diplomatic channels open to manage crises. Regular meetings and a military hotline help prevent accidental clashes, especially in the East China Sea. These mechanisms are vital guardrails, but their effectiveness remains untested in a real crisis. Diplomatic progress is often undermined by nationalist rhetoric or provocative actions. Public opinion in both countries hardens, limiting leaders' room for compromise. Diplomacy now focuses on managing, not resolving disputes. Cooperation on issues like climate change offers rare common ground. The balance between confrontation and cooperation is fragile and constantly tested. The U.S. is the indispensable third actor in the China-Japan rivalry. The U.S.-Japan Security Treaty underpins Japan's defense and deters Chinese aggression. Tens of thousands of U.S. troops in Japan symbolize this commitment. China sees the alliance as an effort to contain its rise and seeks to weaken it. The U.S. encourages Japan to take a greater security role and affirms its defense commitment, including the Senkaku Islands. Deepening U.S.-Japan military cooperation is meant to present a united front, but this also ties Japan's fate to U.S.-China tensions. Any crisis involving Washington and Beijing could quickly draw in Tokyo. Japan must balance its alliance with the U.S. against its economic ties to China. The triangular dynamic among the U.S., Japan, and China shapes the region's future. The stakes are global, and the outcome will define Asian security. In 2025, China and Japan coexist in uneasy competition. China's rise challenges Japan militarily, territorially, and economically. Historical wounds and nationalism keep tensions high, yet economic interdependence still restrains escalation. Diplomacy manages but cannot resolve core disputes. The likely future cold rivalry, cautious engagement, and constant risk of crisis. The choices made in Beijing, Tokyo, and Washington will determine whether this rivalry ends in conflict or a fragile peace. The story of China and Japan is still being written, its ending remains uncertain.